Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We're going to get started. So my name is Kristen Ruff, and I serve here at Philanthropy New York as the VP of Member Services. And I'm joined by my colleagues, Christo Avales, who's our Learning Services Manager, and Allison Goldhagen, who's our Member Services Manager. Before we dive in, I just want to share a couple of quick housekeeping notes. As you see, we are expecting a very large group today. We will probably get up to over 100 registrants. So we have muted the phones, and we'll take questions over chat. Please chat in your questions throughout the session. If it's a quick question that Allison can respond to, she'll do that over chat, or she'll also flag some questions for me to answer for everyone's benefit. And we will definitely, run through the questions afterwards to make sure that we've gotten to all of them. And follow up with you by email if we run out of time on today's webinar. So our objective this afternoon is to give you as much information as we can about the Young Leaders Breakfast Club so you can decide if this is a program that you'd like to apply for. Since the program requires a significant commitment on your part in terms of time and energy and, most importantly, enthusiasm, we want to make sure that you are really well versed in the goals and the structure of the program, the expectations that we have of participants, and the time commitment required so you can decide if this program is going to be a good fit for you at this point in your career. I know that we did provide a brief sketch of the program when you signed up for today's webinar, and we'll go into more detail on each of the areas that we outlined in the webinar description. So our agenda for today is going to, as you see on the screen, is going to be to go over the program goals, talk about the structure of the program and specifically the Breakfast Club meetings, hear from Jenny Correa, who participated in our last cycle of the program, talk about the responsibilities and roles. We'll talk a little bit about the mentors who are participating, the time commitment, eligibility, and then lastly, the application and selection process. And we will try to stop for questions as we go. So I'll start by giving you a little background on how this program came to be in order to put all of this in some context. So as I know many of you have been connected to Philanthropy New York since you started at your foundations, and so you know our mission quite well. But if you're newer to Philanthropy New York, our mission is to promote effective and strategic philanthropy by building the capacity of the individuals who work in the sector and also the capacity of the philanthropic field as a whole. And we've been supporting grant makers for more than 35 years. Over this time, we've consistently heard from members that Philanthropy New York, and when we were originally NYRAG, the New York Regional Association of Grant Makers, gave members critical support early in their careers by providing them both with opportunities to build skills and connecting them to other professionals in the field. And we continue to do this with the 100+ programs that we put on each year, and I know many of you have attended, the different peer networks that we run for different roles within a foundation, and our issue-based working groups. So several years ago, through conversations with members, we started thinking about how we could formalize our support for young professionals who are earlier in their careers and really give you an opportunity to develop strong working relationships with colleagues through a cohort-based program, and one that would provide a catalyst for ongoing relationship building. So we developed this program with leadership support from American Express, and now we're receiving continued support for the program from the Taconic Foundation. So I want to take a second to thank both American Express and Taconic. It was exciting when we received Taconic Foundation support because it was made in honor of Jane Lee Eddy, who was our board chair way back when in the 80s. So the continued commitment to developing leaders the continued commitment of the Taconic Foundation is really quite exceptional. So the goal of the program is to build a sense of community that supports young professionals as emerging leaders, help young professionals develop a support system beyond their organization through peer relationship building and mentorship, and support your own commitment to developing professionally. Obviously, you hear this clear theme that we've been talking about around relationship building. And when we are seeking applications for this program, we're looking for participants who are interested in developing and nurturing authentic relationships with a diverse range of professionals. I know in many of the conversations that I have with leaders in this sector, one of the questions that I always ask is about advice that they have for those of us earlier in our careers. And a common refrain that I hear is how critical it is to have a professional support network if you want to be an engaged professional and really a lifelong learner. And one of the mentors that we had participate last year really put it that your professional support network is like your kitchen cabinet, and it's the people that you go to from time and time again. You've put some energy into building a deep relationship, and you're continuously learning from them and bouncing ideas off of them. And our goal is that this program provides that kind of catalyst. So let's talk about the program structure. This is truly a hybrid program. It's both peer networking and group-based mentorship. So the cohort that for this 2015 cycle will be 60 young leaders and 20 mentors. And we're incredibly excited that this is going to be our largest cohort yet. While 60 is certainly a large number, I do want to mention that based on the strong interest that we've received so far, we expect that we'll receive about 3 applications for every spot that we have available. So with the cohort of 60 young leaders and 20 mentors, we create 20 small groups, which we call breakfast clubs, and each breakfast club is comprised of 3 young professionals and a mentor for the group, which I'm sure you figured out if you did the math. So how do we form these groups? So what we do is based on your applications, we look for both commonalities and differences. Possibly it's similar issues that you're interested in talking about or similar context in which you're working. And at the same time, we're looking for areas where you're different. And so the diversity of interests and roles and contexts will really lead to some rich conversation and give you an opportunity to hear new ideas and perspectives. And also, really importantly, expand your network beyond kind of your current silo. So, in thinking about the structure, after we've formed all the groups, we start with a kickoff session for the entire cohort on April 30th. And then we close the program with a full cohort session in January of 2016. For the 8 months in between, from May through December, each breakfast club meets on their own monthly. And the breakfast clubs alternate between meeting with their mentor and meeting as a peer group without their mentor. So you'd end up with 4 group meetings that's just a peer group and 4 group meetings that are your peers with your mentor. Another piece of the program is that participants meet one-on-one with their mentor. And we've suggested that this happen twice. So once at the beginning of the program to help you establish a relationship with the mentor, and then at the end of the program so you can really reflect on the conversations that you've had and look forward. The other component of the program, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is participant-led programming for the entire cohort. The feedback that we received from the last cycle was that participants wanted more opportunities to get together as a full cohort. So this cycle, this is a new piece of the program that we're introducing. And the important thing is that, for all of you to know, is that as part of your commitment to the program, each of you, each young leader participant, partners with Philanthropy New York staff in small groups to develop and plan educational and networking activities for the entire cohort. So all of this, your monthly breakfast club meetings, your one-on-one conversations, and your participation and in both the planning and then in attending some of the programming that's for the entire cohort really gives you an opportunity to connect in lots of different ways with both peers and experienced leaders in the sector. So I do want to talk a little bit more about the breakfast club meetings. And I realized that one of the bullet points got a little covered by our logo here, so I apologize for that, but I will explain what we're covering. So with the breakfast club meetings, each group decides when and where they want to meet. In the past, groups have mixed it up with a combination of meeting at each other's offices or meeting sometimes over coffee or lunch for a more informal setting. Each breakfast club develops their own meeting agendas, and so you work with your teammates and mentor to identify topics you'd like to discuss and take turns serving as the point person for your meetings. And so a lot of people ask me, what do people talk about at these meetings? And it is absolutely participant-driven, and people use their time together to strategize about short-term and long-term professional goals, gain support and advice for navigating current professional challenges that you might be facing, really learn from one another about the sector more broadly, and just get to know one another as peers in the sector. So one of the things that's really critical to understand about this program is that everyone in the group needs to be engaged in setting the agendas for your meeting so that you're making the most of your time together. The other piece is that, and this comes up in terms of your Breakfast Club meetings, is that participants identify at least one professional goal that they want to work on with the support of their group. And so as you're thinking about this, this should be a shorter horizon goal, something you can make progress toward over the next 10 months. For example, if there's a specific skill you want to develop, or a stretch project you want to work on, or an idea that you want to explore further, like maybe you're considering getting involved in board service, or you're trying to figure out if graduate school is the right next step for you. And so your Breakfast Club provides a confidential space to get support and objective feedback from your peer group and mentor. And it's also a really helpful way and structure for holding yourself accountable to goal. I often liken it to a New Year's resolution, where you really are the most successful in meeting a goal when you've put it down on paper, and we do have templates that we will share with you about how to get started. And in addition to really articulating the goal, you have a buddy system set up to help you meet your goal. So when you're working on your goal, we always encourage participants to take the time to think about and talk through with their group, what are the strengths that you have that will help you meet this goal? What are the barriers that you're identifying? What are the action steps that you think are kind of next to take, and a timeline for that? And so you'll get to use your group as a sounding board and a resource. Every participant in working on their goal is definitely responsible for coming to their meetings prepared to give a brief update on how you're doing, define kind of where you are and what support you'd like, and how your group could be helpful and what feedback you're seeking. So I hope in all of this, you're hearing the message that the content of this program is truly participant-driven and led. We as Philanthropy New York, we don't set your agendas for the group meetings. You really lead this. And it requires both a commitment and interest in working collaboratively, and also it definitely requires being able to bring some strong project management skills to the table. One of the things that we'll do in the kickoff session is do a lot of group brainstorming so that we can talk about all the different topics that people are interested in. And so you'll start out with having done some collective brainstorming there. To give you a little bit more detail about the component of the program that is about planning events for the full cohort, we as staff will do some culling and organizing of ideas for possible programs and events, so you can opt in to planning something that is of most interest to you. We absolutely expect that some of the events will be more social in nature, like happy hours, and that some will be more formal, networking and educational sessions. So not only is it going to be a great opportunity to be able to get to know the rest of the peers in your cohort, but it's also going to be a professional development opportunity to learn how you put together strong programs for a very targeted audience of peers. As you can tell by the way that we structured this, the program really focuses equally on peer relationship building and mentorship. And I always think anybody who's interested in this program, I really encourage them to be really honest and with yourself. If you're more interested in a one-on-one mentor experience, then this is not going to be the right fit for you. We're looking for participants who are as invested and interested in learning from their peers as from their mentor. As I mentioned before, we really see this as a catalyst, a platform from which to kickstart your relationship building. And we're going to hear from Jenny in just a minute, and Jenny, who participated in the last cycle, about what made this a successful experience for her. And as Jenny and I talked, over the course of her participation, it was so clear that a major part of what made this such a successful experience for her was her own commitment to really making the most of this opportunity. Before I turn it over, I just wanted to check with Allison, and it doesn't look like we have any questions, but definitely keep sending them in. So I'm gonna turn it over to Jenny. Before I do, I just want to look at the we've shared some of the testimonials from the participants in the past. And if this looks a little scrambled on your screen, I promise it looked absolutely clear on my screen when we were planning for this, but we will make this PowerPoint available afterwards if anybody is interested. And you'll see, you see kind of in the reflections of participants about hearing kind of what they heard, what they felt about the program, and I hope it's reflected in what I had shared earlier. So Jenny is a program officer at the Pinkerton Foundation and asked her to join us today to share her reflections on the experience. And so I'm going to ask Crystal to unmute Jenny's phone so we'll be able to all hear from her. All right, Jenny, are you on the line with us still?
I'm here.
Great. So Jenny, I'm going to turn this over to you. What would be really helpful is to hear from you about what was the most valuable part of this experience and sharing some reflections on what expectations folks should have to really, when they're thinking about this, about how to make this successful.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I would love to share just a little bit about when I joined and that experience and what it was like for me. So I joined the foundation in January of 2012, and it was my first time working in a foundation setting, so I wasn't really familiar with the job and what it entailed. And as soon as I joined, this opportunity became available, so I was ready to jump on it, and it was, and I didn't know what to expect out of it either. So I think that my goals in the beginning were learn how to do my job, and maybe this program will help me do that. And I think that along the way, I learned that the Young Leaders Breakfast Club wasn't going to help me learn how to do my job. I mean, there were definitely certain skills that it helped me to be able to build, but I just had to really look at my goals again and revisit them and make sure they were, that they were sort of realistic in terms of what the experience could offer to me. I think I loved the other peers that I had in my group and also my mentor. I think we were lucky somehow in that all of us were youth-focused foundations, so we all had similar interests in terms of the types of organizations that we fund. So that was just a plus, and I don't know if it necessarily always turns out that way. But it really led to very interesting discussions within our group. So for example, one of the things that we were able to do was share the reporting requirements that we asked of our grantees, and because they were somewhat similar to each other, it was great to see. It was a great conversation to have because we could see what another foundation was working on that maybe we could also use in our own due diligence when we were working with our grantees. So that was great. Just the sort of the different types of tools that we used when we were keeping track of our grantees and things like that. So that was very helpful. Another conversation that we had that I enjoyed a lot was the types of relationships and the level of conversation that we have with our grantees. For being a young program officer, there were just concerns that I had personally about how to interact with our grantees. How can you be as honest as possible and clear about some of the concerns that you have, but also some of the highlights of their programs. But for me, that was a little bit of a challenge. So it was great to hear from other program officers their strategies, but especially from our mentor, how she sort of worked through that throughout her experience. I think meeting with my mentor, I think some of the things that I really enjoyed was that we shared a lot of similar interests in terms of the types of programs that we supported, but also it was great for me to sort of share with her some of the concerns that I had. Like in all honesty, because I was very, very new to my role, I wasn't very confident in what my job was, and so to be able to sort of open up to her and hear some of the issues that she worked through when she got her position, and just be able to get some advice from her on how to sort of build my own confidence was just great. So that was something that I really valued about that one-on-one time that I had with her, but also to have it, to be able to go back to the larger group with my peers and also share some of the issues that I ran into and how people have overcome some of their issues as well. That was definitely a plus. I have to say that I think I was lucky to have a group of people that were really committed to the program, and Kristen mentioned it. There is a time commitment that you have to invest in this program, and it's not just for me, I think what made it really successful was that on top of our monthly meetings, we decided that we wanted to do more. So for example, with one of my peers, we actually visited each other's foundations and met with other staff at the foundation. So he came here and met with our entire staff here, and I went to his foundation as well. And that was great to hear from other program officers, just to be able to sort of build on my own network and his network as well. And that was in addition to the work that we had already done as well. Unfortunately, in our group, we did lose one of our peers. She had moved away, so but I think that even though we did have a peer that moved away, we tried to make the best out of the experience, and our mentor was really good at trying to bring us in and pull us together as often as possible. So yeah.
That's great, Jenny. The one thing that I'd love to also have you share is, when we were talking earlier, you had shared some about the working on a professional goal and what that actually looked like in reality. If you want to just comment briefly about that.
Oh yes. So yeah, I think one of some of the goals that I had set for myself was public speaking, and how can this program sort of help me with my public speaking skills, or professional writing, or my grant reviewing and financial analysis. So those are sort of my initial goals when I started in the program, and even though I think the goal that I worked on the most was networking and public speaking, I feel like that it was okay. Like, it was okay that the goals that I wrote down for myself when I first started weren't all completely met by the end, because there were other goals that sort of emerged from being part of this program that I didn't really realize were as important to me. But networking was definitely one of them, and I think that's why I think it's great now that another part of the program is that networking piece and having a participant-led event, because networking is such an important part of the job. So.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us here today. I'm going to just take a look at a couple of the questions that came through. Just a second here. So two of the questions that have come up are how much experience are we looking for and when this program is geared to, and also how do we group people? So we defined the target audience quite broadly. The program is targeted to people in their 20s and 30s, and this obviously represents a very wide range of professional experience. And also understanding that even your age doesn't necessarily mean that you have a similar level of experience or roles within your organization. So what we look for when we are grouping people together, as I mentioned, we're looking for kind of common interests but also some diversity in that perspective. But we do look to put groups together that are relatively in the same age range, understanding that the groups are, people who are in their 20s and 30s. And while, again, that's never exactly, the same level of experience or the same, level of, let's say, management within an organization, but we do try to put you with a peer group that will feel like peers. That is always hard because what we know about you from the application is limited, but we do look to that. The other question that we got was, how much experience is appropriate? And again, similar to my earlier answer, it really is quite wide. And what we want to hear from you in the application is really, what are you interested in talking about? What are the things that are really top of mind for you right now as a professional? I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to move forward, and then we'll come back to a couple of the other questions that have come through. So I want to talk about responsibilities and roles. So the structure of the program, as I mentioned, is very participant-driven, and it absolutely takes work. This is not a passive experience. Mentors and participants take equal responsibility for being engaged and contributing to the success of their group. So what we ask is that everybody who's in the group has responsibility for honoring the commitment that you're making. And that's both carving out the time for your meetings and protecting that time. We encourage groups to set all of their dates in advance. And then the other way to honor your commitment is by being responsive to your group in between meetings. Also ask that everyone is, key responsibility for this, for participating, is really being fully engaged in developing your meeting agendas and ensuring continuity from meeting to meeting. So you will take turns serving as the point person for meetings. And what that means is that the point person both coordinates some of the logistics for the meetings just to make sure everybody's on the same page, but then also takes responsibility for emailing a brief follow-up note after the meeting to capture a few key themes from your conversation, and also capture any ideas you generated for your next meeting agenda and any commitments that you want to make in between your meetings. And this does not have to be extensive. It's really just a few bullet points, but we found in our evaluation of the last two cycles that having this feedback, this just brief kind of takeaways, is really essential for maintaining some continuity from meeting to meeting. The other thing that's really critical is committing to creating a safe and confidential space for conversation. As we all know, it's a very, very small sector, and it's critical that you treat your conversations as confidential so that you can really effectively serve as each other's sounding boards. Another piece of this is really committing to supporting and motivating one another. You are helping your group members make connections and also thinking about resources that could be valuable to them, that you're each other's cheerleaders, and that you really are actively listening and truly open to learning from and sharing with each other. And the last thing, which we've talked about, but it's absolutely a key responsibility, is that you're setting a professional goal and that you're also supporting your group mates in making progress towards theirs. So the participants really need to feel committed to both providing value to your group and being committed on your own to doing what doing the work in between meetings so that you get value out of your experience. I do want to talk, so we're going to move on and talk about mentors. So I know that one question had come through, who are the mentors? And this list is on the website as well. So this is our as I mentioned, this is our biggest cohort. And we are so excited to have 20 mentors on board for this cycle because this allows us to accept 60 young leader participants. We specifically engage a group of mentors who serve in different capacities within their institutions, such as executive leadership, program, grants management, finance, operations, et cetera. And you certainly see the diversity of the roles as you look at their titles. We also seek to have a group of mentors who represent different types of institutions, whether it's corporate or family, large foundations, small foundations, because our goal is that the cohort of mentors reflects the diversity of the sector. So while all of these mentors bring different kinds of experiences and certainly working styles to the table, what they share in common is a commitment to supporting the next generation of leaders. They are very excited to lend their time to this program and serve in this capacity. And in my conversations with all of them, they've spoken about how much they've benefited from formal and informal mentoring relationships themselves throughout their careers, and really see a value in building a broad and diverse set of professional relationships. Because this is a group-based mentoring program, and so it is different from a mentoring program that's one-on-one, it's really important that we both define the role mentors play, and I'll also talk about kind of how we put how we assign mentors to these groups. So the role that we ask mentors to play is very much in line with the expectations that I just went over in terms of the responsibilities that each of the participants have. Mentors help create a safe space for confidential conversation. They certainly help facilitate your group conversations. They offer their own personal, reflections. They brainstorm with you about resources and, when appropriate, if there's connections that they can make. And I think what's helpful, and you heard this in Jenny's comments too about kind of the evolution of the professional goals that she had set out, is that they really, they serve in a coaching capacity to help be a dot connector, helping you clarify goals, helping you kind of identify some of the challenges, and really offering some constructive feedback. And I think one of the things that makes this role that the mentors really enjoy is that they get to support you in your career, but there isn't that same power dynamic of being your supervisor. They're not writing your performance evaluations. They're not making decisions about your promotions or raises. And so they really get to focus on the group members in a different way. And whenever, in our evaluations with the mentors, they always report that they really learn as much from the members of their group as they hope their group members have learned from them. So one of the questions that we always get is, can I choose my mentor? And the very straightforward and blunt answer is that no, you cannot choose your mentor. When you participate in this program, you need to understand that you may be matched with any of the mentors on this list. And so, and I said to you earlier that we do is when we're putting peer groups together, we're looking for this kind of commonalities as well as differences. And it's the same philosophy that we bring to matching the mentor to the group of young professionals. We're looking for areas of commonality and looking for areas of difference. Something that I think is important to say too is that all of these mentors, while they have very specific roles within their institutions, they are in positions where they're really working across organizations. So if their role is some in grants management, for example, they are working with the program very closely and they're working with finance very closely, and so they're going to be able to be in a productive and helpful sounding board for you, even if the role is different than the role that you're in. So I want to, I'm happy to kind of take more questions about that, but I really want to make sure that we say that very clearly, that you can be matched with anybody. Now, there are two things that we will take into consideration. If you work at the same organization as the mentor, we will not put you in their group. And if you already have a really strong relationship with one of these individuals, we won't put you in that group either, because we want to make sure that this is an opportunity for you to expand your network beyond who you already know. So we will take both of those things into consideration when we're putting the groups together. So I know that I did mention this, but I do want to reiterate, if you're looking at this list of mentors and you think that you would be disappointed with being matched with any of them, I want you to really think about whether or not this is going to be the right fit for you. Because if you're disappointed with being matched with one of these mentors, then it's just going to start the program on the wrong foot, and it's really not quite fair to the rest of your group. Let me just ask Allison if we have any more questions that I didn't cover in terms of the mentors. Okay. So we're going to talk about time commitment, and I know that there are still a couple of outstanding questions. I'm going to go through a few more things because I do want to make sure that we do get through a few more of the nuts and bolts, and then some of these other questions that we aren't able to get to, we will email out. Yes, we have one question about the mentors.
Yes, somebody just asked about if their mentor match means that they have an opportunity to decline an offer to the program after they're already matched.
That's a great question. We have not had that experience yet. It's something that I would absolutely consider because we know that there's high demand for this, and so if this is not something you want to do, we should give your spot to somebody else. What I would encourage you to look at is if you feel like that would be a position that you would be in and you would decline participation with several people on this list, then I would probably encourage you not to apply, because then we're going to go through this process of the entire selection, and then it will end up being, it'll end up actually taking everything a lot longer if we go through an extended period of people kind of opting in or out. So let's talk about time commitment. We kick off in April, and it goes all the way through till next January. So this is certainly a significant time commitment. It seems impossible to think about next winter, and I look forward to the 3 seasons that happen in between. But yes, we are talking about a 10-month commitment. So definitely look at what your current workload looks like this coming year, any commitments that you have outside of work, just to make sure that you have the time and energy to commit to this before applying. Part of the application, which we'll talk about in just a minute, includes a statement of support from your supervisor. And it's really important to have buy-in from your supervisor because this will cut into your work time. As I mentioned, the program runs from April through January. And I think even though we're talking about monthly breakfast club meetings, honestly, once you look at all of the other activities that we talked about earlier, it's really, I would think about it in terms of a 2 meetings per month type of commitment, with email communication in between. The other things just that I know we talked about in terms of the structure, but just to go over in terms of a time commitment, is that we have this full cohort kickoff program on April 30th. If you already know that you have a scheduling conflict for the 30th, that won't preclude your participation. You have your monthly Breakfast Club meetings from May through December. Breakfast Club meetings may take place before or during work hours. And what we will do is we will ask in the application about your scheduling limitations. So if selected, we can try to put groups together who have similar scheduling needs. The other piece of the time commitment is the work that happens in between meetings. So contributing to your meeting agendas, taking turns serving as a point person, and any follow-up. So it's important to take that into consideration when you're evaluating the time commitment. We did talk about you'll schedule your 2 one-on-one meetings, but you can, obviously you'll work directly with your mentor about the scheduling for that, so it's a little easier to manage. And another part, as we mentioned, another part of the planning is the contributing to the full cohort programming. And the full cohort programming, we expect that what we'll do, in terms of all the different programs that we'll plan, that some will appeal to different subsets of the group. So everybody will be invited, but we anticipate that you'll end up probably wanting to join several of them, but probably not all of them. And then last but not least, one of the commitments that you want to take into consideration in terms of time is that by participating in the program, you do commit to completing a program evaluation at the end. It's a survey that takes probably about 25 to 30 minutes, but the feedback that we receive as part of this evaluation is really critical. And so after each of the first 2 cycles, we made a number of changes to the program based on participant evaluations. So just as you get to benefit from that kind of feedback, we do expect participants to pay it forward to the next cycle and the next cohort. So with all of this time commitment, consistency is really key. All of the work is, in group-based. And so being able to make this commitment is really important for respecting everybody's time and energy that they're putting into it. So let's take a couple more questions before we get into eligibility and the application.
Somebody asked if they could virtually attend the April 30th date.
It's going to be really interactive, so it would be hard to attend virtually, unfortunately. But what we know that some people are not going to be able to attend that either. There's a couple mentors who already have scheduling conflicts. So, we'll make sure that the agenda is such that if you can't attend, it's not impossible to jump back in. And then I want to answer another question that's a little bit more about the content. Somebody asked, is the focus of the cohorts more on specific skill development in current job or working on broader professional development to be a more well-rounded professional? And I really think that that really depends on what feels most pressing to you. I mean, what we want participants to bring are those top things that they're most interested in. So if there's a skill that they want to work on in their current job, or if they are if you're really interested in getting a much better understanding of the full scope of the sector and the skills that you want to develop to move forward, that's what you're going to bring to your group. And I think that that also speaks to how important it is that as peers and the mentor, you're all going to bring things to the table that people in your group either have experience with or don't. And so what's important is the commitment to helping people find the resources they need, even if they're outside of their breakfast club. I'm going to move over to eligibility. And so let's dive right into that. I know there are a couple of questions here. So I just want to, first I want to put this in a little bit of context, especially if you're newer to Philanthropy New York membership. So membership with Philanthropy New York is held by your organization. If you work in the corporate sector, your membership is held by your company's corporate giving program or corporate foundation. So membership is at the organizational level, and it gives you, as a staff member or a trustee, member privileges and access to our programs and resources. All staff and trustees of the member organization are considered members. The only exception to this is for grant-making public charities. Since our work is geared towards professionals in the funding space, for grant-making public charities, membership covers grant-making staff at the organization, but it does not cover fundraising and development staff. So all this is to say that to be eligible to participate in the program, you have to be a Philanthropy New York member, as I've just outlined. And since membership is held by the institution, you must be affiliated with a member organization for the entirety of the program. So from now through to June 2016. We know that 60 spots is certainly a large cohort, but it's still a limited number given the high demand. So we have to make sure that the spots that we are able to allocate are given to people who are Philanthropy New York members. Obviously, we know things happen. But if you are planning to leave your job and you're really seriously considering leaving your job and you don't know if you'll end up at another member organization, we ask that you don't apply for the program. We want to be able to make sure that Philanthropy New York members are able to participate. And so if you end up leaving your job in the middle of the program, you're not going to be able to continue in the program if you're no longer affiliated with Philanthropy New York. And I know we've mentioned this a couple of times, but because consistency is so key to this, and with all of the group work that you're doing, having people drop out, while in Jenny's case, they absolutely made the best of it. But it really, we want to say this up front because we want to be fair to everybody else who's committing. So please, be honest with yourself and be honest with us about what your next year looks like. I'm going to turn to the application section because that's when I'm going to talk about, there were some questions about a limited number of people from each organization.
We also have a couple questions about experience and kind of the range of experience that these young leaders have had, the average, what that might look like.
So in the last two cohorts, it has absolutely been a full range of experience. What I would say is we are looking for people who have some professional experience under their belt. And if that's, even if that's not maybe a job, but you've done certain fellowship positions after college or, significant commitments, professional commitments. But we're absolutely looking for people who have some professional experience under their belt. The last two cohorts have also, it really has been the full scope. We have people who are in we had participants who were in executive leadership roles at their organizations. And we had people who were in more junior roles in their organizations. And so, that is, again, we do try to take those things into consideration when we are putting the groups together. But because the content of the program is so participant driven, it really can be flexible, and it really can be open to a very wide range of experience. And I think that it's also important to kind of reiterate too that there's a lot of learning that can happen between people who have a lot of experience and people who are in earlier parts of their careers, just as in the same way that the mentorship experience between the mentor for the group and the participants. Okay, so let's talk about the application process, and then we'll see what we've missed in our last couple of minutes. So we're going to open the applications on March 13th, and the deadline is March 31st. Then we'll follow up with all applicants by Friday, April 10th. There are two parts of the application. There's going to be a narrative that you submit, and then a nomination from your supervisor. So the application that candidates submit themselves include several narrative questions about your interest in the program. We want to hear, what do you hope to achieve? What are the contributions you would make if selected? What are the topics that you want to discuss? What are some of your ideas around a professional goal that you would want to work on? And also, including a short bio. For the supervisor portion of the application, you will need to make sure that your supervisor completes this by March 31st. Since we don't know who your supervisor is, you'll definitely need to manage this process with them. And the form, it's a very short form. This is not a long letter of recommendation. We know, especially since we know that we are not going to be able to accept everybody that applies to the program, we try to keep both the candidate application and the supervisor nomination very reasonable. For the supervisor nomination form, we ask a few specific questions that will allow your supervisor to share with us why they think you're a good fit for this program and how you'll make the most of this opportunity. So if you're thinking about applying, I would encourage you, we will record this session, and you're really welcome to share the recording with your supervisor, having a conversation about what are the components of the program that really appeal to you and what do you hope to get out of it. And the other reason why we require this is because this will take time out of your workday, and we want to make sure that your supervisor is supportive of your participation. So if you're selected for the program, we will share your application and your supervisor's nomination with your mentor in the group. So in terms of completing the application, we will email to everyone who's attending one of the information sessions link to the application. And we'll also post a link to the application on the two different event calendars that we put out for the webinars. But we really encourage people to attend the info session, so we're going to send the application link out to you directly. In terms of the selection process, we're looking for people who have a clear idea about what they want to get out of it, and that what they want to get out of it is something that this program can provide. We really want to make sure it's going to be a good fit. And as I'd mentioned earlier, we do expect that we'll probably receive about 3 applications for every spot that we have. And this does mean that we are going to need to limit the number of participants from any single organization, both because we need to ensure that the cohort represents the diversity of the institutions in the sector, and also because we're just going to have to limit the number of participants we have, period. So what we're going to do is, if we receive more strong applications from a single organization than we can accept, we will work with the appropriate people at your organization, whether it's your HR staff or your leadership, like the supervisors who send in the nominations, to figure out how we proceed, knowing that we're going to have to limit participation from an organization. But again, first we're looking for strong applications, and then we'll limit by organization once we see how many potential participants we have for the 60 spots. Let me see if I have any questions about the application selection process. And I am I'm absolutely happy to talk to supervisors, your supervisors about this. We will make sure that we're available over the next couple of weeks to take any questions.
Will the managers and that separate application have access to their application?
So yes, let me revise that. In the past, we have not shared your application with your supervisors, but part of that was because we didn't include the supervisors in this process as much. If we get to a place where we need to figure out kind of how many people, that we can only take a limited number of people from a single organization, and we need to make that limitation, then we will share your application with your supervisor. But I should be really clear, I actually hope that you would share your application with your supervisor first, because I think that will help start a good conversation about why you're interested in this. So there was a question about when we say limited participants by organizations, we have a number in mind. We need to see how many total applications we end up receiving. Based on the number of strong applications that we receive, we'll absolutely accept. Then we'll hopefully be able to accept one from all of those organizations. When we receive a lot more, it might be two. I can't imagine that we're really going to be able to accept more than maybe three from a single organization.
And there's also a question about the functionality of our application. Will people be able to download the application so that they can draft their answers?
Yeah, we'll provide a PDF copy of the application so that you can see kind of all of the questions in advance. And then you could either submit it to us through, by just typing into the PDF and sending it back to us, or submitting it through a form. All right, so let's see. And so the only, a couple of things. Do we have any more questions, Allison? No. Okay, so what we'll do is after the webinar, we'll scroll through the full chat and just see if there's anything that maybe we didn't clarify fully, and make sure that we're able to get back to you.
And also, if you have any more burning questions, make sure you put them into the chat now.
Thank you. So as you're thinking about this program, I also want to say that this is only one of many opportunities that Philanthropy New York offers for professionals at all different stages of their careers to, as a place for engaging with the funding community. So if you decide that this either isn't the right program for you or the right time, or if we can't accommodate you this year, we want you to take full advantage of your membership with Philanthropy New York and come to programs, join professional networks, take advantage of some of our issue-based working groups. You'll probably note that our events calendar is always quite full, and we have information about our networks and our working groups on our website. And the other thing that is relatively new that I want to point out is that we've really significantly expanded our communications platform with the launch of the New York Philanthropist. And so you'll see that members are regularly taking on the professional development opportunity that comes with being able to write for the Opinions and Insights column, which is a great way to kind of raise your visibility in the field and take on that professional development opportunity. So we want to make sure that we're finding the right opportunities for you to connect with peers and engage in the sector, whether it's through this program or others. Happy to field kind of any questions by email too if you want to talk this out a little bit more, or by phone. So thank you so much for your time and for your great questions. We will sign off now, but then certainly follow up by email as appropriate. Thanks so much.